You can actually even say it's exciting, There's nothing like being shot at and being alive. It's a very exuberating, experience. That's why some people miss it, Biggest problem in the Middle East, the challenge from IEDs.
Throughout your 38-year career, you were placed in many dangerous situations, including the Rangoon bombing. In such life or death situations, what goes through a person's mind?
You're scared. You're scared, and that's when your mind goes blank. And when your mind goes blank, you don't know what to do. That's when training comes in. Your training, if it's good training, will instinctively tell you to duck or to shoot or to run, but not, run away. Focus on the mission. That is good training. And you know how to operate, your rifle. Just knowing how to shoot it, pulling a trigger and the bullet goes out. That's not it. You need to be able to feel as if the rifle is an extension of your body. When you look at something, you're able to know the range where you must point your gun. That's the kind of training that you need for an infantryman. I was a colonel and a one-star. Because of my curiosity, I did arm myself and go on, I won't say patrols, but even transiting in a helicopter, Humvee, in a so-called safe area. You never know what's going to happen. You can actually even say it's exciting, There's nothing like being shot at and being alive. It's a very exuberating, experience. That's why some people miss it, Biggest problem in the Middle East that I did not envy my Americans or the other countries, the challenge from IEDs. You never knew where they were. This was an insurgency. Your enemy was cheating. They were using weapons that killed indiscriminately. They were using their own women and children. It wasn't a fair fight. The Allies had the bigger bombs, but the enemy had sneaky bombs. We saw this in Vietnam as well. The vulnerability that I see in the United States is not with their soldiers, but efforts that the US government puts to ensuring that so-called innocent civilians are not killed. Once I saw some people being captured, and I thought they were going to be POWs, but actually they were more of a criminal status. So the American soldiers were patting them down to collect gunshot residue. How do you deal with a situation like that? So I always felt that, gee, if I had to fight with Korean soldiers under American standards, I didn't think it was going to work for the Korean military. But fortunately, it never happened.
3,000, 4,000, 5,000.
Looks like it's one of the nightmare underground entrance there. We see the enemy use underground facilities more and more, which limits one of our advantages, which is precision bombing. The real question is, how do you overcome that? We're going to have to reevaluate norms and morals that we've established. For instance, landmines and cluster ammunition, gas warfare. If it's underground, why can't we use gas? Now, we don't use gas. That's why I'm saying that. In my view, the life of my soldier is more important than anything else. And not knowing what's inside that door. There could be suicide bombers there, booby traps. If it's just a guy with an AK, that's one thing. If it's a suicide bomber, if it's a dedicated enemy who's been indoctrinated to not to fear death, who would consider it a prize to give his or her life to take yours, it's not going to be easy. But to be very honest with you, maybe your training and sense of mission will get you through that door once or twice. But in the end, it's about surviving and the camaraderie between the guy that's next to you. That's how you do these things. But in the end, no soldier's hand should be tied behind his back. In these kind of situations, they're using these unconventional weapons. If they're not fighting fair and you're asked to fight fair, you're fighting at a disadvantage. But the reality is that society demands that we do. And so my answer to this is do my best to train my soldiers so that war will not come and that I will not have to face these kind of real world horrors. If I am faced with that kind of situation, I'm glad I'm retired. If my men were getting killed, I'm gonna do my best to make sure that they're safe. If my men have to go underground or have to break down a door where a suicide bomber might be waiting for them, I think as a general officer, I should be ready to go to jail, take responsibility in a court of criminal law for the actions of my soldiers. So I'm glad I didn't have to make those decisions.
I'm hit! I'm hit!
When a squad member is wounded in combat, how does that influence the rest of the squad?
Well, if it's a well-trained squad, it should not affect them at all. They should give the wounded soldier first aid, stabilize him, but they should continue with their mission as best they can. So that's what should happen. If it is a badly trained unit, they will fall apart. That's why training is so important. A soldier needs to know not only how to shoot, but to survive a light wound or even a severe wound. And I think a lot of Western countries have mastered the technique and art of getting that kind of critical first aid. I've been advocating that the South Korean military should also put more emphasis on combat casualty care. As a former general officer, I believe I owe everything to make sure that these men are well trained, well armed, and well rested to give them a chance to survive. So whether it's American soldiers or Korean soldiers, the Korean military has been heavily influenced by American morals, education, and military standards. Having said that, we're not the United States. In operations in a situation like Iraq and Afghanistan, it would be very difficult. Having said that, US Special Forces, Korean Special Forces are predominantly deployed to operations that are not easy. Going into enemy lines, secure a target, whether it's territory, a facility, or a human asset, to conduct special reconnaissance. That's when we will use special forces, whether it's Korean or US. Now, in the old days, the South Koreans planned one-way missions. We send our men to destroy a facility or get a specific target. And the men knew that they were probably not going to come back. And yet, these men took their chances. That was our special forces. The United States never did that. Now, we don't do that. On the other hand, the North Koreans, they still are able to conduct one-way missions. This is a dangerous advantage that the North Koreans have. Now, they're so heavily indoctrinated that they think that this is normal. Now, we see this in Ukraine and in Russia. These soldiers, it seems as if they just expect to die. Only 2 North Koreans have been taken prisoner. And if you see footage as they are committing suicide, they don't cry for their mother or father or their fiancé. They shout glory to Chairman Kim. Our adversaries, especially the North Koreans, are able to still conduct one-way missions. That's a very cruel but a very efficient capability. I trained my people very hard. They griped, but I don't really think they complained because they knew it was for their benefit and it was their job. And because they did that, I concentrated on making sure that they had family time and they had time to take it easy after a hard day's training. I think that's something that a lot of poor commanders forget. They always want to get high scores. And getting high scores is one thing. To explain to your subordinates why this has to be done. But once you achieve a certain level, you must make sure that these men and women, they also have personal needs, and that those personal needs must be met.